Hello, and welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Our guest today is Michelle Jensen, founder of Travel Her Story, travel blog. In 2013, she started blogging out of boredom while working a desk job at a film and TV studio. Today, we will talk about her career change journey and how to become a travel blogger. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm really curious to learn your story. So let's start with the very early years of your life. What was your dream job when you were a child?
Oh gosh, I feel like every millennial child I've ever met said marine biologist at one point or another because we all watched Free Willy and Flipper one too many times or something like that. But yeah, it changed constantly. It would be like nurse, marine biologist. I watched a movie and suddenly I decided I wanted to be a surfer. I was very influenced by whatever was around me.
Oh, okay. I never heard the people telling me marine biologist, I think. And then what did you decide to study? What is your educational background?
Yeah, so I have a degree actually in something. The degree doesn't exist anymore. So I usually just say communications, but it was called electronic media management.
Oh,
And the only reason I got that degree is I was trying to graduate with a film and television degree, but I had already spent enough time in college because unfortunately you need 60 credits to transfer from community college to a university, and I had 58 and a half. So I did a wash of a year in year three of just trying to get enough credits to transfer, and I did online courses. And in that year, I wound up actually getting a full-time job at Sony working on one of their TV shows, actually several of their TV shows. I was working on a variety of them. And so by the time I got to university, I was like, how the heck do I get out of here? I've already done my time at Sony. I just want to graduate. And they're like, we have this electronic media management degree. Do you want that? It's like the film and television degree, just not with producing and directing classes. And I was like, yeah, sure. But yeah, I checked recently and it no longer is offered at my college.
so I guess that was your first job then.
My first job was actually an internship. I designed the website for the Jonas Brothers Street Team before they became huge on the Disney Channel.
It's interesting. And so then after Sony, how did you develop your career from there?
So how it works in TV is basically you just have to network and find different people in the industry. So the first job I had after leaving Sony, I was with Sony for I think 3 or 4 years at that point. By the time I left, I basically just hit up everybody in this thing called Production Weekly that basically lists all the projects that are being filmed and found my way into an interview. And they unfortunately didn't pick me, but they liked me so much they forwarded me to somebody else, and I wound up getting hired on that job actually after they turned me down too. But then their number one quit. It's very being in film and television is very up and down. You never know if you have a job or not. But yeah, from that point on, I like made friends to the next show and the next show. So it's very much about networking.
At what point in your career did you find inspiration to start Traveler Story? And I understand this was when you were still working at a film and TV studio.
Yeah, that's right. When I was still at Sony, a lot of my job was waiting around. That's a lot of like TV and film is that like you have to hurry up and wait. So you could be sitting at your desk like 12 hours a day, working like three or four of them, and then just waiting around on other people for the rest of it. So it was a way for me to have something to do. I had just graduated college. I remember right after I graduated, I had my boss ask me, he's like, how do you feel? And I was like, bored. And he looked at me confused, and I was like, I'm used to going to full-time school and having a full-time job. Like, doing one seems very slow to me now because I've gotten so used to doing both. So with blog, like filled in a little bit of that vacuum. And I had just came back from a trip to Europe after graduating college, like many kids do. They go on a trip. And a lot of people were like, oh, your vacation looked great. Where'd you go? And I got tired of emailing people. So I was like, I'll just put it on a website. And that's how the inspiration for the blog came about.
Mm. And what was the turning point that made you realize blogging was more than just a hobby for you?
So that actually I've had that blog up for 11 years, and it wasn't until this year that I really took it seriously because how TV works is basically between seasons, you're laid off due to lack of work. Like a teacher, where you work for part of the year and then you have the summer off. So I would go travel in that like month or two off and then blog during that time. And then I would run out of stuff to write because it's a travel blog. So that kind of like never gave it enough fire in the engine to get anywhere sustainably. And then I tried it in 2020. I was like, at the end of 2019, early 2020, I was like, I'm gonna give it a go again. And then obviously COVID hit, nobody was going anywhere, travel was not on the menu any longer. So I dropped it in 2020. But after being unemployed at the end of last year, earlier this year, I got encouraged to like bring it back up. And I was like, rather than just stare at LinkedIn all day, I might as well do something positive and try to bring back this travel blog. And I really did not expect it to go as well as it has. I really thought if I make $50 off of it a month, I guess it's all right. I had no idea that I'd be making thousands of dollars a month off a blog. It's really surprised me in some ways, but been very gratifying. And the work I finally put into it is paying off.
That's great. And I think it's really inspiring that you've been working on this project for 11 years. And I get during these 11 years, you had time where maybe you felt like, should I continue doing this or not? Or not?
Yeah, no, for sure. There was times between 2020 and earlier this year, it just was dormant. I didn't touch it. I just sat on the internet. And that was one of the things about being a blogger is people don't realize you have to pay hosting fees for your website and you have to pay for different things. So it was charging me money anyway, even though I just left it there. And that's actually one of the reasons I got encouraged this year is the guy I spoke to. He was like, at least make back what you're spending on it. It's not a loss because at the time I didn't have any ads on it. I didn't have any affiliates really. I didn't really have anything on it that could actually be profitable in that time that I wasn't even, that it was just like looming on the internet. That was originally the first thought is I'll just put the ads on, I'll just put the affiliates, then I'll leave it alone. But then it gets addicting to see your website perform and people are on it and you can on Google Analytics you can see where people are coming in from different countries and what they're reading and it becomes very interesting and very addictive in that way of helping people with their travels.
Mm. So you had a flexible job that allowed you to develop this project through the years, but did you have any challenges? Did you have to face any challenges during the transition from your job to making this blog successful?
No, because I was unemployed at the end of last year, so I've just
Mhm.
been doing the blog since. But actually, as of last week, I just got hired for a contract role full time for a number of months to actually write blogs for them in the travel niche. So my hobby blog has become my real full-time job for a notable company. So I'm very happy that yes, my travel blog's making money, but now I'm also getting paid by other people to write travel blogs. So very well worth my time reinvesting in myself.
That's good. And what's one of the most memorable experience you had while traveling for your blog?
I feel like the two that I always think of is I got locked out of my hostel one time. Luckily, I was there for my friend's wedding. So I had just come back from the wedding with a bunch of the other party goers. And I was by myself. So I stayed at the hostel because I like to be affordable. Unfortunately, they changed the code for the door at certain days of the week, but didn't tell me. So I come home 1 in the morning from after partying with everybody at the wedding, and nobody's there. The code doesn't work. There's no phone number. I can't find anybody to call or reach out to. So luckily, I knew where some of the other wedding guests were staying. So I went and knocked on their door and I was like, can you let me sleep on like your floor or something? And they're like, don't worry, we have a couch. You can stay on there. And that's why I say luckily, because if I had not been there for a wedding, if I was just there for travels, I don't know. There wouldn't have been somebody to knock on a door for. I would have been paying for another hotel or something at that, right? At that. So that's usually a fun one because the next day everybody was like, Michelle got locked out of her hostel. And I'm like, great, everybody on this wedding party knows that I did not get into my place last night.
And generally, how do you choose the destination you write about?
Usually just that because I have a desire to be there. The last place or I have a friend who wants to go. So the last place I went was Sweden and Finland. My friend wanted to see the Northern Lights for her birthday. Her birthday's at the end of December, so we went late December into January and saw them there. I'm actually heading to Belize and Bacalar, Mexico in the next couple months. And that was just like a place that I've seen so many pictures of. I was like, it looks gorgeous, it looks fun, let's go. So it's usually a mix. I don't usually choose too much based on what can I write about. I choose to travel and just enjoy it and then tell people about that so that I can help them with their own trips.
Mm. So many people that are listening are probably trying to find some inspiration from your success story. So what strategies did you use to grow your audience and make Travel Her Story successful?
So the main way that I make money is through SEO. So for anybody listening who doesn't know what SEO is, it's search engine optimization. So basically, you're telling Google what you are. I have a post that does very well that's 2 days in Athens. I have to put that keyword in the post so that Google knows what it is. And I'm very making a very basic explanation of SEO. It's a little more nuanced, but that's the general idea. If I didn't put in things like the Pantheon or the Acropolis or stuff like that, like Google would be like, what are you writing about? Like they would be
Mm,
confused. So it's just making sure A, you're being helpful to your user, but B, being clear to Google what you are so that people who are looking for that can find you. A lot of people think I make a lot of money off of social media. I actually don't. Where I primarily get my traffic, about probably I'd say 90% of my traffic at least comes from Google. The other percent, a little bit of the other search engines, not much, and then Pinterest. But Pinterest I view less as a social media platform and more of like a visual Google, since you're going in there and asking a question, what to do in Barcelona, and it's going to populate you answers. So that's actually the only type of social media I make money on. You do not need to be a big TikToker, big on Instagram, have a large following, anything like that. It's really just making sure you're writing for your audience.
mhm. And I find it very interesting because a little bit old school, but also I think I'm a big fan of SEO and organic growth. While nowadays it seems that everyone needs to spend countless hours on social media. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the time spent is rewarding enough. Is this your experience as well?
Social media, right? If I do an Instagram post right now, it might show up on people's feed for what, a day or two, maybe, and then it falls off, right? Because there's so much on there. Versus SEO, until somebody writes a better post than me, or Google thinks somebody wrote a better post than me, I'm gonna have the number 2 slot on Google until I'm outranked,
Yeah.
right? So the longevity is much longer. The other nice thing is I can go back and edit that post. Let's say I do lose my number 2 slot. I can go back and update things or change things or add more information and hopefully regain that or even get to the number 1 slot. Now it's a little bit like I always joke, it's like the stock market that your rankings go up and down every day because Google is changing its mind constantly. So that's a little bit caused me to pull my hair out at some points. But at least I can see that versus social media. You do a post and it doesn't do well, then you just got to keep on trucking. Like you can't go back and try to make it better and then hope for it to get views. It doesn't really work that way. So that's one of the things I really love about SEO over social media.
Mm. How do you balance your time between SEO and social media?
I schedule all my Pinterest pins through a thing called Tailwind. So I can basically schedule all of them for weeks and weeks out and then just ignore Pinterest for the time being. I try to automate as much as I can, or I think they call it like batch create. So I'll create like 50 Pinterest pins and then schedule them out and then just ignore it for a while.
Mm.
So yeah, I do not spend that much time on social media. I try to post every so often, just people know that the blog's active if they click on the link and stuff like that. Because if they went on my Instagram and didn't see anything for the last 3 years or whatever, they'd be like, oh, is this blog alive? But social media is definitely not my priority in that way, just because it doesn't make me any money, and I'd rather spend the time writing the blog posts.
Mm. And then, do you have any techniques to prevent being burnout? Because sometimes when you spend too much time online with digital and social media, it can become overwhelming.
Yeah, usually what I do is I just see how I'm feeling about it or if I feel like I'm doing too much. I'm the kind of person that I was even like this as a kid. Like I would sit and do the project until I finished it, even if it took me like 12 hours. And that's not really that healthy, especially if you're a kid. Like
Yeah,
you shouldn't be spending 12 hours sitting at the same project. You need to get up, like get some fresh air, get a snack, do
I
something,
can
go
do
for a
the
walk.
same. I know it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not always great. So I will realize like at some point where my body is just, no, you've sat here doing this for 4 or 5 hours. Go for a walk. do something else for 15 minutes, even if it's just like making yourself a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you want, walking around a bit. Because I found I actually get my best ideas while walking. And I think that's just because your body is in movement, frees up your brain to not be like locked onto something.
Mm.
So yeah, that would be like my number one tip for burnout is just kind of like listen to your body. If you're cramping because you're sitting over your computer and it's been 8 hours of you working on something, get up, move, relax, do meditation, whatever it is that will get you out of your head.
Mm. So, what type of advice would you give to anyone would like to start their own blog?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have learned so many different blogging techniques from different avenues over the years, but the one that has helped me the most recently, there's a woman named Nina. She has a website called She Knows SEO. If you put that on Google, it'll come right up. And she teaches for free a lot of great blogging SEO techniques. She also has some paid courses. So if you're starting from real scratch, I highly recommend sign up for one of those. I signed up for one, but then I realized some of it was stuff I already knew, so I didn't get as much as I would have gotten if I was a new blogger out of it. But I still highly recommend. She has a Facebook group as well. So say something happens, you're confused about something, you have somewhere to go. And like I said, it's all for free, like joining the Facebook group, her website, her YouTube videos explaining different ways to like search for keywords. Because that's one of the big things is, yeah, I can put 2 days in Athens, but if nobody's searching for that, then you're not going to get any viewership. So you have to make sure your keywords, people are searching for it, that it's a popular keyword, but also a keyword you can rank for.
Mm.
For instance, I'm not going to beat out Condé Nast or Travel and Leisure or CNN Travel or anybody like that. They're far too big for me to try to beat out. I'm just a tiny blogger compared to them. So that's why I said that. I was like, I was very simplifying SEO, but she does has some great YouTube videos that I'd recommend checking out.
So, do you use any specific tool to help you to track the right keywords?
Yeah, so I use one called Key Search. It's basically the cheapest one out there. There's SEMrush and Ahrefs and all those other kind of ones, but they're like hundreds of dollars a month. Key Search, I can't remember the exact amount that it is, but I want to say it's like about $50 a month, I think. So far more affordable than $300 a month. Um, and that's how I use it to find my keywords. I also use it to track my keywords. I use it to suggest things that should be in my post. So for instance, if I'm writing a things to do in Barcelona, it'll also suggest like the phrase what to see in Barcelona, suggest alternates and things like that. So it's a very worthwhile tool in my opinion.
Mm. So, how do you balance travel and content creation?
So I try not to usually write while I'm traveling just because I get sucked in and I'll sit there for 8 hours writing a blog post. So I usually don't write while I'm traveling, but I definitely will take photos. I'm not so much video, but I'm trying to get better at that because I know obviously with the emergence of TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff like that, but I've always been that person that will take 8 million gajillion photos at a place. That's most of what my camera is worth on my iPhone. It's just basically travels and then random screenshots of restaurants I want to go to. So yeah, it's pretty easy to balance for me, but I can definitely see like those more like TikTok heavy or the ones that I know so many bloggers that have drones or they have some kind of fancy tool they're doing. But yeah, I don't do too much of that just because the blog really you don't need videos and stuff like that. You can add videos to blogs, obviously. You can insert a YouTube video and stuff like that. But yeah, I just tend to do photos and I'm just one of those people that just take 8 million photos.
So, let's talk about personal growth. How has blogging changed your perspective on travel and life in general?
I feel like in travel in general changes your perspective because it forces you to get out of your own backyard, right? Like you get to meet new people, you get to experience these new cultures, history, the whole lot. You get to see how different people think. And I feel like blogging for me, those two go hand in hand because I'll meet people who maybe they had the same experience as me, maybe they didn't have the same experience as me. And either way, I'm learning from it. So yeah, I feel like travel and blogging in general just opens you up. I talk to people, other bloggers all the time that are from different parts of the world that are either writing about where they're from or they're traveling around like I am. But yeah, it just expands and broadens your horizons.
And have you learned something specific about yourself through your travel adventures and blogging journey?
I feel like I've learned how much you can push yourself. A lot of my travels are solo. I've been to Thailand by myself. I've been to Mexico by myself. I've been to many countries in Europe by myself. I've driven across the country by myself. And I have people constantly all the time, I can't believe you were in this place by yourself, or you can't believe you did this by yourself. And to me, that's just normal now. Only in recent years have I actually found a friend. We were both traveling solo in Barcelona and we met up there. And she actually only lives an hour from me in California. So it's funny we met each other while across the ocean in a completely different country. I've actually joked with her. We've spent more time out of the country together than we have in our own country that we're both citizens of.
I guess that's a great journey of exploration, just that to be able to be with yourself and to explore different part of the world, meet different people is a great experience and yeah, a growth experience. So let's talk about the future. What's next for Traveler Story? Do you have anything exciting planned? Or any...
Yeah, so that trip to Belize and Bacalar,
Mm.
Mexico, and then I'm actually going to Mexico City after it for New Year's. And then also, yeah, the job that I start actually as of next week, a week from today, I'm supposed to start writing those travel guides for the company. I'll be very excited to see how I learned from that experience, and I can probably bring that back into my own writing as well, because I'm going to be writing not just travel guides for them, it's AAA. They do a lot of roadside assistance and help you with road trips and things like that. So I definitely feel like I'm going to learn a lot while working there. And hopefully I can translate some of that to my own work as well.
And how do you see the future of travel blogging evolving, especially now that I not mention it, there is we are surrounded by AI.
Yeah, so I feel like it sucks that Google is sometimes you put in what to do in Paris and Google will spit you out
Mm,
some AI generation.
yeah.
And I know a lot of bloggers are upset by that. And I get it because yeah, A, sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes it'll be like, what to do in Paris? And I'll tell you to go see the Colosseum. And you're like, that's not in
Oh,
Paris. But it's going to get better and better. So I don't think that's going away. And I don't feel the need to cry over spilled milk. I'd rather cry over Google, for instance. You're not supposed to keyword stuff words, and I've seen people win on Google for keyword stuffing words. And I'm like, you're not you doing it. This is for users. You're just doing this to rank. But as far as I think it's going to continue to evolve. I think we're all just going to get used to it. I keep thinking of back when they made the printing press and they probably put all those people out of work that was doing it by hand. And we just kept on trucking when they made the printing press and we're printing books a lot more frequently.
yeah.
There's always going to be a progressive change. But yeah, there's positive and negatives. I use it for idea generation. I'll be like, what's the
Mm,
variant on things to do in Barcelona? What's another word I can use?
yeah.
But I also know that like some blogs are getting demonetized because they use too much AI. The amount of blogs I've seen where the images are AI, all the
Mm,
text is AI, it's not really useful information, and they're getting demonetized. Luckily, I think people will still continue to look for genuine voices of that have been there. And that's why I always try to be like, I went to this trip and this is what I did, and write it that way so you know it's me. And that's why I actually have images of myself on my homepage. I just try not to have them elsewhere because I really don't love pictures of myself on my website. But I want people to know there's a real person, there's like a human over here, and not just some AI chat box spitting out with 10 things to do in Rome at the end of the day.
yeah, and I think you're doing a great job, and we are happy to know and to read stories that are real stories, and that to know that there is a person behind them. But of course, as you mentioned, there are positive and negatives, and I think that an in-between approach can maybe help us to get the best out of it. So we are reaching the end of this episode, but we have a few more questions. So first of all, if you could give one piece of advice to someone considering a career change to follow their passion, whether that's blogging or not, what would you say?
I would say think about what you want to do at the end of the day. I have spent the last over a year and a half trying to have a job in what they call community management, which is part of marketing. And I had done that for a number of years. Unfortunately, due to the market, a lot of layoffs in tech and things like that have made it really hard to find a job in that area just because it's like one of the first ones to get cut because marketing isn't sales. I really struggled with that the last year. I was doing everything I could possibly think to do. I was in Slack groups, I was in Facebook groups, I was talking to everybody and I could meet. Didn't wind up doing it. So that's when kind of the travel blog fell into my lap. of something else for me to feel some kind of satisfaction doing, because sitting on LinkedIn all day is not healthy for anybody. And it gave me something to focus my energy on. And that's what wound up getting me that job that I'm doing as of next week isn't in community marketing. It isn't in what I've done in the last few years that I have more experience in. It's in travel blogging. And part of the reason they hired me, they told me, it was like, oh, we've really seen your blog excel this year. And I'm like, yeah, that's because I finally put the gas in the engine and figured out what I was doing. So yeah, if you're split between you're doing something and maybe the passion's not there anymore, maybe you're just not as feeling as rewarding anymore, or just like I said, in my case, it wasn't that it wasn't rewarding, it just wasn't possible really. I saw people far more qualified than me, like not getting work. So I knew I had to change the gears on the car there. So yeah, if you feel that kind of pull in some direction, listen to it, try it out.
And now, really, the last question. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I feel like sometimes I think about this and then it always changes based on what's going on. But I would say right now, probably be like just stick to things more. Sometimes I stick to things very well. For instance, a travel blogging in the past, like I said, I was whenever I had free time or whenever I was not too busy. So there was no kind of consistency. And I feel like I've translated more of that into my life as I gotten older. I learned that a lot while I actually lost 75 pounds during COVID, because I started a workout program and learned consistency from that. I also wasn't strapped to my desk 12 hours a day at a TV studios any longer. But yes, just be more consistent and like chase whatever's making you happy.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us today, sharing your story and your knowledge about travel blogging.
Thank you so much for having me.
And the last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you.